we now have partners reaching out to our embedded librarians, or analysts as we call them, in a way that we only saw when they needed research. Now they're reaching out to them for business and competitive intelligence information. We have 19 curated electronic newsletters that go out every single day, where the librarian is the person who is synthesizing all of the news from all the major legal publishers and the business papers like the Wall Street Journal, and they're deciding what are the articles that are relevant to my practice. And they're putting that out there in the morning, and it's digital. So you get a headline, you have a little abstract, and if it's of interest, you click on the link, it takes you out to the original source. We use an aggregator tool to do this. And you're now seeing partners who say, thanks to that article that I read in that whatever curated newsletter, we actually got more business.
Oh.
And so now they're coming back and saying, you know what, we want to monitor this industry, or we're prospecting this particular client, in this particular area of the world. Tell us what's going on. And so as the needs change daily, the analysts are now involved and engaged with partners in a way that they only were engaged if there was a need for research.
Yeah. Now, let me ask a little bit. These little newsletters, or whatever you want to call them, do they go out beyond the firm itself, or are they totally interior?
So they're mostly within the firm,
Okay.
but certainly, and I'll give you an example. We have a client, which I won't mention, but they're in Japan. I'll just say that. What we did is, as a result of the newsletter that we were putting forth, that newsletter was being used to provide the general counsel of this Japanese company with particular areas that the partner would provide these to the general counsel to say, these are the areas that are novel, new, coming up that you should be aware of. And what the general counsel then now does, and this is still happening, is would come back and ask us for one of the partners or the associates to write a memo regarding this particular topic in more detail. And so we've been very instrumental in helping the lawyers here kind of have their fingers on the pulse of what this particular company is interested in and what changes are happening to that industry that then are translated to the general counsel, and then the response back is a memo, which we do obviously as a client service, and as a result, and I wouldn't say as a result of our newsletter, but certainly as a result of the goodwill and the work that the firm is doing on behalf of this particular client. The firm will be opening up an office in Tokyo by the end of this quarter.
Well, that's interesting. So the librarians, or analysts as they really are part of helping to develop the relations directly with clients.
Sure, we're heavily engaged, especially in the law firm community. I think this has now become the norm. Quite frankly, librarians who are, whether they're called librarians or analysts in different firms, but the ones that are being proactive now and not only supporting the practice of law, but also supporting the business of law, I think those are the ones who have made the transition and have been successful, because as you well know, since 2008, in the private law firm community, there's been dramatic changes in, quite frankly, in terms of the number of private law librarians that are even around today, because there was a huge layoff of administrative staff since 2008 because of the economic changes.
Even the firms themselves have tightened, from what I read. A lot of the former positions filled by associate lawyers no longer exist. Everything is tighter and leaner.
Absolutely, and so how do we do? You hit the nail on the head. Is how do we do more with less? And I think part of that is looking at being focused on only the things that law librarians can do based on their expertise. So it's doing the complex research, right? Because anything that's easy, and quite frankly, we all know that there are now tools out there that make it simpler for young lawyers to be able to do some of that research on their own. We know that the secretaries, for example, have gone the way of the dinosaur. Lawyers type up their own documents. That was unheard of even a decade or more ago.
Yeah. Anybody over a certain rank wouldn't go near a keyboard or a typewriter, especially a typewriter, because it would be demeaning in those days.
So that's all changed. So the way that young lawyers practice today has dramatically changed. So what is the role that we're uniquely qualified to continue to assume, and what other areas can we expand into? And certainly in my career, knowledge management has opened tremendous doors here at the firm. You know, not only in terms of my role here, but you know, just last year I was recognized as the Knowledge Management Professional of the Year for ILTA, which is the International Legal Technology Association. So not only recognized by you know our profession, AALL, but also recognized by you know a different professional organization.
So your peers that really know what they're looking at have acknowledged that they're looking at the right thing.
Right, and I think many of you know the law firm community that has really not only survived, because my role is not to survive. My role is to leave the next generation of law librarians, whatever we call them, analysts, to leave them in a better position than where we are today. And I think what many have recognized is that opening up doors and expanding our horizons in terms of the scope of what we touch within the law firm environment is actually enabling those law librarians, analysts to go into non-traditional roles. So there are those who are getting involved in e-discovery, those who are getting involved in information governance, knowledge management, training. There is a whole host of new positions that are opening up that I think we need to be open to understanding that you know we can apply our traditional skills that we learned in library school to these new positions that are evolving.
Well, we see a variant of that in the academic world. I've been retired a few years, and it hadn't really quite started when I retired, but from what I hear and talking to colleagues and observing, there's a role for the traditional librarians, not in the library, because that, even in the academic circles, is becoming more of a place where students come to sort of sit and work, but they don't have to access books. They can do it elsewhere. So the librarians are moving out and really directly working with faculty on helping them find the knowledge they need to do their work, do their writings, and meeting with their classes in some depth and teaching their students how to do sophisticated kinds of research in today's environment. I talked with a person the other day, I won't name him, but I was visiting a school in the District of Columbia, Washington, and he was preparing to go to an international tax course session to instruct the students in that class how to go about research in that particular subfield of taxation.
Well, and I'm glad you bring that up because I have been engaged with Cornell's Law School in teaching as a guest lecturer, teaching a class about knowledge management. And since then, we've expanded where I have the head of my e-discovery department doing a video conference into the classroom as well. And I think that there's, you know, quite frankly, I think there's been, you know, kind of each, whether the academic law librarians and the private law librarians, each in their own communities, not really as engaged as we could be together. And I think there's huge opportunities for us to try to integrate, you know, our common professions for the betterment of both academic and private law librarians, because the academic community has significant pressure now, based on the fact that the law school classes are downsizing
by the Great Recession, just
absolutely,
like the real world is.
Exactly, and so that provides opportunity where we talk about, okay, how do we work? Because we're looking to get practice-ready graduates so that they can hit the ground running when they come into the law firm. Because many of our clients are saying, partner, I'd rather pay your $1,000 an hour rates than I would for you to give us 3 associates who quite don't know what they need to know yet. And so one of the things that we do here at Debevoise is we have a business course that we provide. It's a mini MBA program for 3 weeks in conjunction with Columbia's business school here in New York, to try to get them all of the acumen and business skills that they need to have to understand the context of the business world where many of our clients come from. And so not only do they have the legal background that they got in law school, but when they first come in, the first 2 weeks is all about, you know, how to read a balance sheet, you know, understanding some of the basics of transactional practice. And they get that, which enables them to better understand the context of when our clients are coming to us and wanting to not just get a legal solution, but they want that legal solution within the context of their industry, of their business, so that it's the right solution for them at that time, not just the right legal solution, but the right business solution.
So it's right for the client.
It's right for the client.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like an absolute win-win-win thing.
Sure.
The individual lawyer is getting skills and information that will probably be very helpful, not just immediately, but in the future. The firm, the employer, is benefiting in that they have a more efficient employee, if I can use the term for an associate or even a partner. And Columbia, I mean, academic places are looking for ways to keep, money coming in to support their programs, and by providing this service, they're charging, I'm sure, accordingly, and it's just good for everybody.
Yeah, and I think from a recruitment perspective, it helps. So so we recruit from certain law schools, and Cornell happens to be one of them. So what better to have? What I hear from some of my law librarian colleagues in the academic environment is that sometimes they don't have the credential, credibility, the creds as they call them. They don't have the creds with the students about, when they talk to them about what the law firm environment is like. The students sometimes they won't pay attention.
Of the faculty.
Correct, and a lot of the faculty that are tenured haven't been, if they've practiced at all, sometimes it's decades since they practiced, and so they're not aware. So I'm actually involved and engaged in the AMPC committee, and one of the programs that we're planning to provide in this year at conference is a program about law firm technology beyond Lexis Westlaw. So what is the technology that's being used to manage records, to manage the timekeeping records, to manage the finances, so that the academic community learns more about these technology tools that are being used every single day in the law firm, but that the law school student doesn't learn about until they arrive. And so it's a way to give them a precursor of what it is that you're going to need to know about, well beyond the document management system, well beyond PowerPoint and all the other office tools. There's a whole world of tools that you will be required to learn, but many of the students don't know, and certainly many of our academic colleagues don't know about. And so the idea is to bring this to them.
Sit back in their libraries like your early boss did, and sort of come to us, because it doesn't really work that way.
I think that's what we're trying to do is think of ways creatively within the profession to help each other out, since we seem to all be in the same boat now in the legal industry. There's a seismic change going on, that it's not just we've been referring to this economic recession. But, it's 8 years. Economic cycles typically don't last this long. And I think the reality is we all understand that this is not just an economic downturn. This is a true seismic change in the legal industry and in the way that the practice of law is changing. And so what the clients are demanding is efficiency. They don't want a law firm to reinvent the wheel. They want the law firm that they go to have the expertise, whether it's transactional, litigation, corporate tax, whatever it may be, to be able to repurpose the knowledge they already have for their particular issue.
I mean, those forces were at work well before the recent recession. I mean, I remember hearing even back into the 90s, firms were not able to just bill clients. Clients wanted to know, be more involved in what sorts of things were being done by the firms, and particularly what was being billed into the fees that were being charged. Well, so that was beginning, or maybe well underway.
Sure, absolutely, and I think it's been an evolution. I think more than ever, clients want to see value. What is the value that we're getting for the cost of the services that the law firm is providing? So they want to see not only that we're providing excellent legal services, which is obviously the expectation that all clients have, but how are we helping them, in terms of providing extranets, for example, that's relatively new in the last decade, is, how can clients get access to the work product that the law firm has provided as a result, and how do we access that without having to call the partner, the billing partner, saying, I need this document, I need that document. So now we're being proactive about enabling the lawyers, the general counsel's office, and other lawyers at the client site to actually log into a very secure environment on the web and to access that content. So we're always looking at ways of how can we put the client first. What are the things that we're doing from a knowledge management perspective, so that we don't reinvent the wheel. We learn and we repurpose from the knowledge base that we've created in terms of practice group pages, client team pages, industry pages that enable the lawyers to work more efficiently and to get in hand those documents, that work product that we've developed previously, so they can learn from it, reach out to the experts in the firm that know about that area of law, and then produce the new transactional document, the new piece of memorandum, or whatever else that they need to produce for the client in a more efficient way.
It sounds like times have really changed, and I'm sure in the right way, in that now it's efficiency, very different from not too distant past, when at least in some practices, associates primarily, would like to go on to Lexis or Westlaw, and they were stumbling around because they didn't really know how to find things efficiently. However, it was all billable time, which got billed out, and then the associate was given credit for more billable time, which was instrumental to their advancement.
Well, Patrick, one of the interesting things that you should know about, and I think probably since your retirement, one of the new things in law firms is, just like the medical industry, all of our timekeepers, right, which is all the lawyers, the paralegals, the analysts, they are required not only to keep track of time, we always have, right, by the billable hour.
Yes.
But they're now required to keep track of what's called task and activity codes, and now phase codes. And these codes, the task and activity codes, are provided by the clients. And there are certain tasks or activities that they will pay for, and other task and activities that they will not pay for.
Sounds very reasonable and proper. I mean, the days when the resources could just run a little bit longer and it was in somebody's interests are no longer the fact, from what you're telling me.
And we're getting smarter in that we recognize we haven't done a great job. And when I say we, I don't mean just Ever Voice, but law firms in general have not done a great job about understanding what are the true costs.
Clients are getting smarter too.
Right, and what are our true costs? And now we've implemented in the last year something known as phase codes. And these phase codes are, okay, if we're doing an arbitration, how much does it cost us to do the discovery, for example, at the beginning? How much does it cost us if we were thinking about, each segment of an arbitration? And so what we're starting to do is try to apply the time that it takes us to do a particular activity to that activity. So later on, as you probably have heard in the legal industry, these AFAs, alternative fee arrangements, are becoming prominent in many firms. So now you're having to work under a budget, not necessarily the billable hour. And under a budget, unless you know how long it actually takes you to do all of the component parts, there's no way you can give a reasonable budget and know that you can stick to that budget. So that's a whole new era of learning for our young lawyers, in that it's not just the billable hour now. We need to know in each phase of an activity, how long is it taking you? And what we're trying to do is leverage that data, right? There's a whole, the new terminology of big data. It's been in all the media recently in the last couple of years, but we are trying to leverage our own data internally to better predict the cost of services to the client. So we're responding to the clients who are demanding more efficiencies. And this is just a new way that we're doing this.
Now, do you get involved in that, you and the other library-based analysts? Or,
Yeah, so some firms now have been hiring directors of pricing, what they're called directors of pricing. This is a brand new title.
Gino Grady mentioned that the other day. Somebody, they have that.
So the directors of pricing are the ones who are coming in to try to set up an infrastructure around how do we talk to clients about pricing. Because as you can probably imagine, many of the partners who have been practicing for many years may not feel as comfortable speaking to clients, general counsels, about the cost of services. And so the director of pricing, one of the roles is to talk to the partners about, these are kind of the bullet points of the things you should be talking to your clients when you first engage. When you're negotiating the engagement letter, what do you talk to clients about? How do you talk to them about pricing? And talk to them about the various ways we could possibly do work, not just through the regular billable hour, which has been traditional, but we can offer alternative fee arrangements.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the education process for the partners. But what we're helping, to go directly to your question, what we're helping the pricing professionals with is, how to think about first of all, educating the lawyers about these programs. So we help them with creating videos that enable the lawyers to learn about how to use this new technology, but also helping them, how do we research and search our own data. So that's another area that we've been helping from a knowledge management perspective is, okay, we're now gathering this data, where do we put it and how do we search it? So again, it's taking the traditional skills that law librarians have had and kind of rethinking about what we search. It's not just external information anymore. It's internal work product, it's internal data that's financial. So these are all the various ways that I think law librarians in particular can grow their profession, keeping the best of the traditional skills that they've learned in school, but certainly learning new skills and new ways of being valuable to the organization.
Now that sort of brings us about something else I wanted to focus about. A couple of years ago, you wrote a white paper that was well received from what I've been told. Knowledge management, a strategic role change for legal information professionals. And in this particular environment, we're now the year 2016, there was a recent proposal at AELL to rebrand the association, rebrand our profession a bit in keeping with perhaps perceptions that need to change about what it is we're all about and what we bring to the table that those who employ us and use our services are looking for today. You've been involved in sort of beyond the firm in this. I mean, the paper, you've been involved in the associations, both traditional law library ones, locally and nationally, but a few others that are more on the knowledge, information, and management side, I believe. You want to talk a little bit about some of that role that you fulfill?
Sure. I think it was that white paper that you referenced was the first time that the American Association of Law Libraries actually worked with ILTA, the International Legal Technology Association, to enable or to help the technology professionals within law firms to understand that law librarians had a role to play in technology and in the organization of information, which again many of the IT professionals in our environments really don't. They manage data, they don't manage information, and there's a big difference. And so it was the first valuable white paper that really brought to the attention of the IT professional, legal professional world, the value that law librarians brought to the table. And in fact, it's been significant because last year, for the first time at the ILTA conference, which is an annual conference just like AAL, there was actually there's a new user group of law librarians, and there was over 30 law librarians at that reception. And I think it tells us something about the profession. Law librarians can't exercise their profession without the use of technology. It has gotten to the point where it doesn't matter whether you're in a court environment, an academic environment, private environment. We're like the plumbers. If we want to be vibrant in our profession, we have to understand and use technology in a way that is advanced from the general population. And I equate it to the plumber. You would never hire a plumber who doesn't know how to use a wrench. And similarly, law librarians who are still not acclimated to the new technologies, whether it be social media, managing intranets, managing work product, I foresee that we're not going to really have a vibrant community and a profession if we don't embrace all of these new technologies and become the experts at it. And I'll give you a great example. In my staff, I have Bess Reynolds, who is retiring at the end of this month after a decade here at the firm. She had a former MBA many years ago. Decided that she was going to become a mom, and went back and got her library degree, and was at the firm here. I brought her in to be the technical services manager. Her title today is electronic resources manager. So the traditional technical services title completely eliminated. And what she manages is our digital platform comprised of 20 different modules from our integrated library system. And she has become, at least in our community, the law firm, the law library community across the country, she has become the prominent guru with respect to ebooks. Now, about 6 years ago, I said to Bess, we need to learn everything there is about ebooks, because we're going to have to, start providing this technology to our lawyers, because our lawyers are traveling all over the world. They don't have access to a physical library. And not only that, but sometimes they can't access Lexis and Westlaw because they don't have online access. We need to be able to start providing them with ebooks that they can upload onto their tablets and other smart devices, so that they carry the library with them wherever they go. And after a little bit of grumbling and, why do I have to do this? And I say this because this is a real world example where Bess has become one of the foremost experts on ebooks. She was invited to a number of programs at AALL. She was invited to Harvard. She was invited to CALL, our Canadian law librarian colleagues, and she has spoken about ebooks all over the world. We have a Lexis ebook platform. We are one of 2 firms today that is piloting the Thomson ProView ebooks, the new regeneration, because the first platform died on the vine. They couldn't get law libraries to adopt it. And this is a perfect example of where I see that, while we may not want to necessarily always embrace changes, as a result of that, 6 years later, Bess is retiring now at, I won't say the age, but, retirement age, where she is going out at the top of her profession, having embraced a new technology that would be typical of younger law librarians, who are what I would consider digital natives. Know this because that's all they've known, since elementary school is working with technology. And she was able to do this, pretty mid-career, a little bit beyond mid-career.
The age when you are resistant to change because you're comfortable with how things are.
And so now we're at the point now where she is actually managing what we call Dev Mobile. It is an application that you can download from the App Store. It's provided by a vendor out in the UK called Priory Solutions. And we have customized this application for our lawyers so that they can access all of the research and current awareness resources relevant to their practice on their iPad or iPhone without having to Citrix into the network. Now, why is that important? Because today, our financial institutions clients are demanding a whole layer of security that didn't exist, even a few years ago, where it takes sometimes minutes, if not, over 10 minutes to get onto the network with all the technology that has to be applied from a security perspective. And so now they're able to open up their iPhone, iPad, and instantaneously get access to that, research services, whether it's Westlaw Next or Lexis Advanced or something on Bloomberg or Wolters Kluwer, whatever it may be, but they have instantaneous access to it. So, and it's easy because what we've done on the back end is we've married our HR system with this application, and on the back end, our integrated library system. So there are APIs feeding the app. So the app knows that this is a partner in the New York office who specializes, for example, in white collar. And what we've done from the traditional tech services side is said, okay, we are creating a taxonomy so that all of our resources are mapped to a particular department and practice area. And so when that lawyer opens up this application and they're a white collar lawyer, they don't see every application that we have available. they only see the applications relevant to a white-collar lawyer. And that makes it tremendously efficient for the lawyer to just get what they need. And so we're being seen, and that white paper, I think, brings to light that we're being seen as having a technology role. And here at the firm, several years ago, we did our first electronic resources fair. Mm-hmm. It was an idea to just invite the lawyers into our physical space, and we set up kiosks like you do at the AALL annual conference where you have an exhibit hall. Yeah. We set up kiosks, about 13 different kiosks with different technologies, and the lawyers came down and were amazed at what we could provide them with, and they started seeing us as technologically savvy, mm-hmm. which, as a firm, quite frankly, in the American Lawyer surveys of associates about technology, we were never highly ranked. And for the first time, the library was seen as that technology savvy community within the law firm. Right. And I think that's what my white paper was trying to introduce to the law library community, that we have a role to play in technology because our IT professionals are not thinking about they're thinking about technology from the infrastructure perspective, not from the information management perspective. And that's something that we're uniquely qualified to take on.
Sort of what do we want to do, not what we think we can do.
Correct.
Approach. Because what we can do is going to change with technology, right. Taking on new power and new speed and right. new whatever.
And I think
what we need to do is what we're really going to keep focusing on.
Right, and I think that's what we need to continue to focus on. And what are the opportunities out there? Kind of looking beyond the horizon. What are the things that we can take our traditional law librarian skills and not be wed? And this is the thing that I do want to point out is I was for the name change that just happened, even though I wasn't happy with the name that was being proposed.
Well, I'll go on record in saying I was in full agreement that a change is needed. Maybe the particular name right. wasn't the right one. And I told the president that informally, but it was in the works. Right.
But I think the idea behind the change, and I again, whether it was well executed or not, we can leave that on the side. Yeah. But I think the reality is that there is a need to understand that times have changed, mm-hmm. not just changing; they have changed already. And for those of us who are more on the front lines of these changes, mm-hmm. we're seeing that the role of the traditional law librarian has evolved dramatically, and if we're not open to thinking about ourselves in different roles, in different and meeting different opportunities, because we're a service-oriented, we've always have been for over 100 years. Yes. We've been a service-oriented profession. That's our role, is to support whether it's faculty, whether it's judges, whether it's partners and associates at firms. Our job is to support them. As their roles have changed, we need to understand that our roles necessarily have to change. Mm-hmm. And so what I would, the message that I want to leave for the future law librarians who are coming up the ranks is that be open to these changes, be open to understanding what are the needs that are not being met in your organization, and whether they fit within the bounds of the traditional responsibilities that you learned about in library school or that you thought were your responsibilities when you came into your first job. Those evolve. Those are responsibilities that evolved, and take the opportunity, take that chance, take that leap of faith, and step into that new role and responsibility, because generally speaking, if you step in and you do a good job, you're rewarded with more work, not less. And today, having more work is not a bad thing.
Well, we need to recognize that we change and need to go with what needs to be done.
Sure.
But we also have to sell ourselves. And that's
Marketing
where
is
the
huge.
Concept of the name change of ALL was basically driven by that reality, that not only do we have to be able to handle the new needs, but we have to be able to communicate to those that need someone to handle them that we do it and we can do it.
Right. And I think we live in a very sophisticated, complex world, and I think that unfortunately, the name librarian, brings up a lot of stereotypical images that are not consistent with our real roles. And I don't know that we're ever going to change that stereotype. And I'm not saying that I certainly don't suggest that we make a name, that we decide on a name change because of that stereotype. Yeah. But certainly we have to recognize, whether it's in the academic community where we have librarians who are actually managing the networks of the academic institution, they're managing the intranet. Certainly here at my firm, my department manages the firm's intranet. Yeah. It's not the IT department. And so I think we need to understand what are all these roles that we're being asked to manage that really have evolved tremendously from our beginnings, where they have nothing to do with the traditional, managing of information and research. They go well beyond that. And I think, there are roles that we are now filling that are inconsistent with what we would consider the traditional librarian role. And so we are actually excluding many of the librarians who have taken on these new roles within the confines of what today is AALL. And what I would suggest is that we need to broaden our community to allow people who are law librarians first and foremost, who have taken on these new roles, to be a part of our community. Why would we push them out to ILTA, for example? ILTA is happy to accept law librarians into their organization, and in fact they have.
More members, more things they can do.
Right. So I think AALL, in order to be relevant, has to think about how do we expand, to meet the needs of these professionals who were law librarians, who have an MLS degree, but are now doing things that are not either not being called librarian or not within a library, the confines of a library.
Certainly the traditional, what one sees as the role of the library and the librarian has changed.
Right. And then, quite frankly, there are lawyers who have decided that they no longer want to practice, and they've significantly, since the economic downturn, have been moving into positions that were typically law librarian positions without the library degree. They've been moving into positions of knowledge management, positions of information governance, positions of e-discovery. And so doesn't it make sense that we have an organization that is really focused on information management that law librarians learn about in their graduate programs, to have a community that is, inclusive instead of exclusive. Yeah. And I think that's the role that I think, as a profession, we've had the same profession for over 100 years, but I'm going to bring back my immigrant roots back to the table here. My great-grandfather was essentially what would be known as a cobbler here in the United States. Okay. And in Spain, where they came from, in northern Spain, there were particular types of these wooden shoes that would be worn when you went to work on the fields. And just in the last couple of years, the last cobbler in northern Spain just passed away. And now you have a community that is trying to teach young people about the skills of cobbling and setting up a little museum to talk about what these cobblers did and the types of different shoes that were involved and why they were essential before the day where you went out into a store and bought shoes. And so that's kind of in my mind where I don't want to see our profession going, where we become extinct like the dinosaur. And I'm not suggesting that we will, but I think there is a real sense in my mind that unless we evolve, we're going to see a contraction of our professional brethren, not an expansion, and certainly not a successful one. And I think understanding that we need to make a change, understanding that we're evolving for positive reasons, not just in defense of this community that has to respond because of all these economic pressures. But how do we do that in a successful way? In other words, not responding just to the pressures to change, but doing it in a way that's strategic, that opens up more doors for us instead of closing more doors for us.
Yeah. Steve, in a sense, you have just summarized, I think, what this whole session has been about. Change, the need to do it, and to bring others to realization that we are different in meeting current needs and not just traditional needs. So we're sort of at the end of a good point to sort of consider wrapping things up today, but it is customary, you may not have anything to add, but to ask if there's anything we've not talked about that before we do close the session that we talk about.
The only thing I would mention, and it's really in line with what we've been discussing, but I think that's really important, is I would encourage young professionals coming into the profession that there is a vibrant profession still to be had. I think there's a sense that from some of the older professionals in the community that somehow our best days are behind. And I would challenge that in saying I think our best days are ahead of us. It's a vibrant community. There are a lot of opportunities because, especially in my community, my immediate community of law firms, we're seeing where lawyers are becoming very focused and specialized in areas, and they need more administrative support to enable them to do their jobs. And I think there are great opportunities for these professionals to come in and really work hand in hand as professionals, sitting side by side with the lawyers who are also professionals, in a way that our profession didn't really have that opportunity in the past. There were the lawyers and the non-lawyers.
Yes.
And I think there are wonderful opportunities today for professional librarians to come in, and whether they get their, I would welcome them to get their law school degrees as well. But even I have people on my staff who don't have library degrees, but they have MBAs, and those MBAs are essential to helping the transactional lawyers. So there's a lot of opportunity today to work in non-traditional ways that we never thought of even 10 years ago. And these kind of doors continue to evolve and open up. And I think that David Susskind, who was one of our keynote speakers a couple of years ago at AALL, mentioned this. That there are positions that will be opening up that are going to be available to non-lawyers in law firms that are going to be strategic and important. And director of pricing happens to be one where I think librarians do have the skills and expertise to start using their capabilities as excellent researchers to help with data mining, for example, or to help with enterprise search, which means how do you calibrate the search engine to find the right things. Well, law librarians know when they search hundreds of different resources externally, and they know when they quite didn't get the right information. They understand how to calibrate searches so that they get the right information. Well, take that same skill and apply it to an internal enterprise and what's known as enterprise search, which is like the Google for the internal organization. All these wonderful opportunities are available to the young professionals, and I think that if we can just get over the hurdle of understanding that whether we're called law librarian or we're called legal professional or some other name, that it's not all about the name. It's about continuing to be relevant in the world that we live in. That's what will make the profession successful, is to be relevant. And what we label ourselves, how that changes, that is to be decided, obviously, but I think that's the focus, is continuing to stay relevant. There will be a successful profession for the new generation coming in to own and to take over.
Somebody's got to do this work.
Absolutely.
Let it be us.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you, Steve, for taking the time to come in on a holiday even to talk to me. It made my commute into the city probably easier because trains weren't quite as packed. But and thanking you for being part of this legal history of this history of law librarianship. I'm thanking you not just on my behalf, but on behalf of Michelle Wu, Frank Hodak, and of course our colleague Dick Spinelli, with whom I'm working, all three of them, to put together this oral history of law librarianship for the Hein Online Spinelli's Law Library Reference Shelf section.
Well, it's certainly my privilege to be a part of this effort and this project.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.